Okay, let's get started. So we're gonna have a couple different stages to our sitting this morning to do a little observing of ourselves. So I think everyone that's here live, you usually start sitting in a chair, and that's often what I recommend. If you're able, however you're sitting, to have your feet flat on the floor, we're going to start with a little bit of focusing on our feet. So that's a goal, right? And even if you have socks on, if it's warm enough that you can take socks off, bare feet, we'll give you a little more information. But regardless of what's on your feet, if they can just be flat on the floor, and then really from that feeling of the feet flat on the floor, start to work your way up. So they're really engaged with the ground. Then we sort of come up through the legs, find some lift in the spine, and balance our head right on top of our neck. And then just let your eyes close. And for the first couple minutes, I'm not going to read yet. We're going to just take our mind's eye down to the soles of our feet and just observe. Don't feel like you need to change a lot right now. If the breath can help you find a little bit of release and spreading in the feet, that's great. But see if you can resist the temptation to do a lot of physical adjustment. At least that's a temptation for me. But just imagine the feet sort of spreading on the floor, and notice if one foot seems to be a little bit more able to make contact with the floor, a little heavier, a little more able to spread, and if another one is resistant to that. And again, just without judgment or a lot of big shifting, just send your breath there, observe what sort of contact the feet are making, and see if you can make them feel broader and heavier on the floor as time goes on. Now for the next minute, you can continue working with the feet. I want you to also bring the backs of your thighs, the sort of hamstring area, very close to where the leg comes into the pelvis, this area here. That is sitting on a chair. So I want you to try to bring some of that same awareness to that part of the body. Often we have some tightness in the hamstrings. Our legs do a lot of work, and the hamstrings is a name for a group of muscles, right? But the whole back of the thigh, the hips, is often an area of some tightness. So mirroring what we just did with the feet, finding some release, some spreading, that work can continue. I want you to see if you can feel the backs of the thighs spreading and being heavy into your seat. And that doesn't mean a collapse of the whole body, right? In fact, as we get more rooted in our base, we can counter that with more lift, right? We need the stabilizing to find the lift. So thinking about the backs of the thighs as a stable, strong foundation, and that part of that stabilizing is actually a release and a broadening. That they can't be narrow and tight, but they need to be broad and heavy in order to support us. And again, not feeling like you need to make physical adjustments right now, but send your breath there. And if one side of the pelvis feels like it's tighter, lifting more, see if you can just release and even out the weight side to side. And if it's challenging, which it may very well be, don't turn judgment toward yourself or be frustrated about it. This practice of observing is really the work. And then as we get more observant, more sensitive, maybe we can find more release or adjust more accurately. But right now it's just about that observing And even the imagery of the backs of the legs spreading and releasing is a really good practice. Okay, now we're gonna have another stage to our sitting, but let your eyes float open for a moment. And I'm sure I should have mentioned this right at the beginning of class, but I was excited to get going. If you have a yoga mat that's thin, a rolled yoga mat is a great thing to do, but also a thinner blanket. If you can just grab something to make a little roll, and you may, once you see how we're gonna use this, you may end up needing to adjust how much of your blanket or mat is rolled, right, to be the right height for you. But we don't want it to be too big. Smaller is better. So go ahead and grab a thin blanket or a yoga mat and just get a little roll, and then I'll give you a moment to come back and show you where we're headed. And I'm gonna give you a side view, I think. Okay, so we're gonna sit on this roll, and where it should land on the body is right underneath the buttocks, right where the leg comes into the pelvis. So we're kind of pinpointing that place where the leg and the pelvis connect. So we're gonna sit on it, and it might, if it feels too strong, you make a little bit of a smaller roll, but we're gonna sit, again, trying to find right that place where the buttock comes in, where the legs come into the pelvis, where the buttocks and the backs of the thighs meet. And you're just gonna sit on that roll, refine the lift of the spine, and we're gonna sit for a couple more minutes, breathing and seeing if we can relax the backs of the thighs into this roll. Let the roll kind of create, the roll is a really good way to release some tension in those muscles, but we have to let it do that, right? So again, finding the lift in the spine, but seeing if the backs of the thighs can spread and be heavy into the roll. So once you've set yourself up, refine your sitting position, let your eyes close, and we're gonna sit with this for a moment, you just being with your breath, and I'll share a reading. Okay. I'm gonna read two different excerpts from Thich Nhat Hanh's book, How to Sit Today. And they resonate with me, with the work that we're doing and with this moment. And as per usual, whatever takeaway you have is perfect, right? And if you would prefer to not listen to me right now and just be in your own, these words can just wash over you, right? However you choose to engage. So the first reading is called Letting Go. Sit in such a way that you feel light, relaxed, happy, and free. Many of us have so many anxieties and projects that weigh heavily on us. We carry our past sorrows and anger, and they become a kind of baggage that makes life heavy. Sitting meditation is a way to practice letting go of the things we carry needlessly. These things are nothing but obstacles to our happiness. Ease in our sitting and ease in our breathing nourishes the body and mind. When we are calm, we can look deeply into a difficult emotion to see its roots and understand it better. First, we nourish ourselves with the joy of meditation, calming the breath, body, and thoughts. Then we embrace the difficult feeling. This brings some relief and gives us a more solid base for investigating and transforming the difficulty so we can get to the healing we need. Finally, We can explore if our emotion is based on something happening in the present or something that we are still attached to from the past. If it's from the past, we can begin to let go, to more truly see and experience the present moment. I'm going to actually let us sit with that one for a minute, because that feels like a good place to be. And just to bring it more into the work we're doing, this idea of being calm so we can explore something that's challenging for us is, yes, a mental and emotional work, but it's also a physical work. So sometimes when we find a place in our body that's really holding on, if we approach it with some frustration and pent up anger, it's likely not going to release for us, or we're not going to fully understand it. But if we can get curious and say, okay, I'm going to be calm, I'm going to take some time, then I'm going to really see what is it that's holding me back from this particular physical experience. And can I approach it with some gentleness and ask myself some questions and really learn about it, and then find a way to let it go? You know, is it an old injury and maybe there's some physical trauma there? Oh, it's really hard to let go, it's scary. Recognize that that's in the past. Can you move forward from here? Okay, let the eyes float open, and you're going to come off that roll that you had. And then one more time, just sit on the chair. We're not going to close our eyes again, but feel the backs of the thighs now. Likely, they feel broader and maybe are making more contact with the chair. So just feel whatever shift has changed is perfect. And now we're just going to bring some movement into the body and do a little breath work with this movement. And the rhythm is just that we'll inhale and extend one leg and reach up through the arms. Exhale, we're going to try to keep the new length in the body, but bring the arms down and bring the leg down. And the other part of this challenge is to see, even as we engage the leg more, can the back of the thigh still be broad, right? That we don't go back to that tight place. Inhaling, reach up through the arms, extend one leg. Exhale, bring the leg down, arms to the side, keeping lift in the body. Now you can go on your own rhythm. We're going to do this a few times. You don't have to be right with me. Just feel that extension as you inhale, and then the release of the limbs, but the maintaining of the lift in the body as you exhale. And check in with the backs of the thighs. Are they staying broad and long? See if you're tight in the face, and maybe smile a little bit to let the face muscles go. Couple more. You're finding your rhythm now, so just enjoy that. Even yourself out. You can do 2 more if you're even right now. Or just 1 more to even out. And now take 1 more moment. Feel the feet on the floor and the backs of the thighs. Just notice if there's a little bit more, as the blood gets flowing, a little bit more tactile awareness. And then if it's available to you, go ahead and you can help with your hands. Grab the inner side of your knee with one hand and bring the other foot up across ankle to knee. Yeah, so I have this little triangle with the leg here. And now just there's a possibility that if there's some tightness in the hip, the weight tipped and you're heavier on the thigh that's in the original position. So see if you can reach out this leg that's open to the side from the inner thigh out through the knee, reach in that direction and take a little bit more weight that way. But we're not shoving the knee down, we're reaching, opening up the inner leg here. And then bring the arms back up and take a couple breaths. And open the arms wide. If it helps, if you're really feeling uneven with your weight, one side to the other, another thing you can do is take your hands to the chair. I'm holding the back of the chair and lift up, but use your hands to help maybe sort of shift the weight a little bit and encourage your seat to not just totally lean in one way, but shift a little, find a little bit more evenness. Sometimes with the hands on the chair, that's easier. Okay, now help this knee down. Feel yourself, 2 thighs on the chair, 2 feet on the floor. And then we'll go for the other side. Helping this leg up, take the ankle to the knee. Just notice where the weight lands, depending on the mobility you have in the hip. We might sort of compensate and try to really fall to one side. So thinking not of shoving, right, not of being aggressive, but with the breath, lengthening this inner thigh and shooting energy out that knee to shift a little bit more in that direction and even yourself out again. And then bring the arms up. Take a couple breaths. Little smile if the face feels tight. Or just anyway, because smiling is nice. And bring the arms down. If holding the back of the chair was nice for you to get a little bit more opening up in that inner thigh, you can stay there for a moment. Okay, and then help that leg back down. Just straighten both legs for a second. You get the heels can be on the floor or up, but just open up the backs of the knees. And then those of us that are going to come to standing today will come to standing. And we're going to use this chair a little bit to continue to explore this extension of the legs. So just take your chair in a way that it's in front of you and you have a little bit of space in between yourself and the chair. You have the same obstacles I have, just try not to step on the dog. Inner edges of the feet are touching. If that's comfortable for you, if that hurts the low back, just take them a little wider apart. Now we're standing on these feet that we started class thinking about and observing. So stand tall, take the weight a little bit back in the heels, and take a moment, it doesn't matter if eyes are open or closed, but reassess the weight on the feet now that we're standing. And from the feet, really rooting down into the floor, start to lift up through the legs. Remember that our strong, stable foundation also gives us a chance to build on top of it and lift on top of it. So the feet are firmly in the floor, and above that, we lift the legs, lift the spine, open the chest. Now the backs of the thighs don't have anything they're touching right now, but see if your mind can sort of remember the imprint of that chair on the backs of the thighs and keep spreading them broad. So they're not going back to a really tight place. They're lifted and engaged, but they're also wide. And now our same little breathing pattern from before. Inhale, stand tall on one leg and reach another leg up and take the heel to the chair. Now lift up through the fingertips, be really tall on the standing leg. Stay long in the body as you take the hands to the hips. And if it's available for you, any amount, just reach the chest forward, come to a little bend over that leg. Don't go too far or start to round the back, but as you go forward and maybe feel some tightness in the leg, think of going broad with the leg. Yeah, there might be a desire to bend the knee. That actually makes it harder on the hamstring. So instead of pushing, just think go wide. And then lift the body back to vertical and bring that leg back down. Other side. Inhale, reach up, take the other leg up. Press into that standing leg heel, get tall through the body. And then stay long in the body, just take the hands to the hips. Another inhale, and then exhale, tip forward, reaching the chest forward. I'm not closing off the chest, I'm reaching the chest more forward. And as I start to feel some work here, some tightness, I think of spreading, being broad in that back thigh. And then lift the torso back up and bring the leg down. One more time, each side. And it's okay if we're not all together, right? So this is part of, as we do more and more practice, we learn to be attentive to our body and our experience. So stick with the directions I've given, but also if you need to be somewhere a little bit longer, or maybe the coming forward isn't working for you, you're just working on the length in this orientation, just make the choices that are best for you in this moment. And stay with the breath. That's always a place to go back to. If you are feeling at all unstable or unsure or uncomfortable, just stand and breathe. That's always an option. Or sit back down and breathe. Whenever you've finished each side, take another moment standing up, just feeling the feet on the floor and feeling if there's any new sensation in the backs of the thighs from that work we just did. Again, there's never a wrong answer. When we're working to observe, there's not anything you're supposed to see or feel. It's just the practice of watching and feeling. Okay, then we're going to shift back. If you are going back to a seated position and that roll felt really good on the thighs, for me, I have one hamstring that's kind of a forever injury. So if it felt really good, feel free to use that again in the end here, either for the whole ending section or just for part of it. If it didn't do anything for you or you just don't want it right now, of course, this is an option. And also, as per usual, if you'd rather be lying down or in a different or whatever position is more quiet for you for this ending few minutes, you make the choice that's best for you, okay? I'll give you a moment to set yourself up and get comfortable. If you do choose to use the roll again, you might find after the second time sitting that there's a lot more release, right? Sometimes when we first try something, there's some resistance in the body, and then it's like, oh, that actually feels really nice, and our body can sort of find a little bit more opening. So if you choose to use it again, just notice how doing again maybe provides a really different experience. Okay, and whether you're seated or lying down, let the eyes close now and bring yourself back to your breath. Okay, and now I'm going to read the second reading from Thich Nhat Hanh's How to Sit. And I just want to preface this by saying that this passage is sort of talking about a kind of habitual tendency and what we do to let go of it. But I would just like to add that something that I'm curious about also is how we start new habits. So it's really challenging for me, for example, to practice my yoga practice at the same time every day. Not that that's necessary, but the few times in my life that I have been able to do that, it's felt really nice. And because of my life and my schedule, my own practice tends to be whenever I have time for it, right? And so that's life, that's logistics. It's nothing to beat yourself up about. But in thinking about the habits that we have inside of us that we don't even notice, another thing that I'll just add is that I like to think about if there's ways that I can shift those to create the habits I want, right? And I think that's a really individual thing. But I think that it's an interesting question. And as I read this, even though this is talking a little bit more about something that maybe we need to let go of, the other side of that coin for me is how do we create new strategies to sort of bring the habits or rituals, routines that we would like to have more fully in our lives. So this is entitled Habit Energy. And as per usual, listen, let it wash over you, do what you need. This is your time. When you sit, you may feel something pushing you to get up and do something else. That's the energy inside each of us called habit energy. Habit energy is energy that is fueled by an old pattern, situation, or tendency. It isn't based on our real needs and our real situation in the present. Habit energy is always pushing. We have the habit of thinking that happiness isn't possible in the here and now, that we have to go somewhere else, look for something else, move into the future to find it. That's why we keep running. Often our parents ran too. These habits are transmitted through our ancestors and are usually long-standing. We deeply believe that in the future we may have more conditions for our happiness, that our real life gets started somewhere else at a point ahead. It's because of our habit energy that the present moment can seem boring. This is a strong energy. If we are not aware of it, it can be stronger than we are. When we sit and are quiet, it's a reminder to let go of the habit energy and return home. And the final thing I will offer today, as far as reading, is something we already sort of did together. And it's one of these mindfulness on the go, or that's the title of the book, but I just think of them as practices for mindfulness. And this one is called The Bottoms of the Feet. As often as possible during the day, place your awareness in the bottoms of your feet. Become aware of the sensations on the feet, the pressure of the floor or the ground beneath the feet, the warmth or coolness you feel. It is particularly important and helpful to do this whenever you notice yourself becoming anxious or upset. Often, we walk through the day paying very little attention to our feet, unless they are hurting or we stumble. When we are caught up in thinking, the practice of moving our awareness from the head down to the feet can have a calming and settling effect on the mind. Just be with your breath for another minute. Gently let the eyes float open and come back into your day. Nice work, everybody.